I got a heartache coming my way.
When Paul Stanley spoke about Ace Frehley after his passing, he said something nobody expected, that the man he'd argued with for decades was part of the foundation of Kiss, and that he genuinely missed him. But the full story behind those words, the differences, the regrets, the moments nobody talks about, reveals a side of their relationship the public never truly saw. Who was Ace Frehley and his legacy? Long before the fame, the face paint, and the stadium-sized explosions, Ace Frehley was the spark that helped ignite Kiss. He wasn't just the lead guitarist. He was the attitude, the unpredictability, and the edge that made the band feel dangerous in all the right ways. His spaceman persona didn't just become iconic.
I was listening to the radio.
It reshaped how rock fans viewed the role of a guitarist. And once he stepped on stage, that raw, off-the-wall energy turned every show into something unforgettable. Your work did more than fill songs, carved out the band's identity. Those soaring solos, the way he bent notes like they were alive, and the effortless swagger he carried, that's what gave early Kiss its unmistakable bite. Even when he stepped away from the band, his influence followed him. His solo project didn't just succeed, it became one of the most celebrated side paths of any rock guitarist from his era. He built a legacy on instinct rather than strategy, and that's what made him stand out. Ace wasn't trying to be perfect, he was trying to be real. And in a world obsessed with polish, that authenticity made him a legend. But the story of who Ace was behind the scenes, and how his untamed spirit shaped everything around him, only gets more complicated from here. The tragic end, Ace's death. Ace Frehley's final chapter wasn't the kind of rock and roll headline anyone expected. In late September, he had a fall in his home studio, the kind of everyday accident that usually ends with a bruise or a bad headache. But this one didn't. The injuries he sustained were far more serious than anyone realized at first, and within hours, his condition took a sharp turn. Doctors did everything they could, but the damage was too severe. Ace was placed on life support as his family waited, hoping for any sign of improvement. Weeks passed, and the updates grew more heartbreaking. What initially looked like a recoverable accident had turned into a life-threatening situation. By mid-October, his family faced the impossible decision no loved one ever wants to make. On October 16th, surrounded by the people closest to him, Ace Frehley passed away at 74. The official ruling later confirmed what many feared. It was a fatal accident, a simple fall that turned tragic. News spread instantly, shaking fans, musicians, and even people who hadn't followed Kiss in decades. Ace wasn't just another rock legend. He was the wild card, the spark plug, the unpredictable force that made every moment feel electric. Losing someone like that, it doesn't feel real at first. And for Paul Stanley, the shock cut even deeper, stirring up memories, regrets, and emotions he hadn't spoken about in years. But when Paul finally broke his silence, what he revealed about his connection with Ace showed a side of their relationship fans had rarely seen. Paul Stanley's tribute, admiration despite tension. When Paul Stanley finally spoke about Ace after his passing, his words carried a weight that silence couldn't hide. He didn't try to rewrite history or pretend their relationship was perfect. Instead, he said it outright. He and Ace had lots of differences. Not arguments, not disagreements. Differences, the kind that build over decades, the kind only people who've lived through the same fire can understand. But then he said something that stopped fans in their tracks. That's family. To Paul, Ace wasn't just a former bandmate. He was part of the foundation that held Kiss up in its early, chaotic days. Paul admitted that they couldn't have started the band without Ace's presence, his energy, and the strange magic he brought the moment he plugged in. Even though they eventually grew in different directions, that legacy, that shared beginning never faded. And when Paul described Ace as one of a kind, it wasn't a cliche. He meant it. He talked about Ace's wild streak, his unpredictable nature, and the way he lived life with no apologies. He even recalled Ace saying that if his life ended tomorrow, he wouldn't regret a thing because he lived exactly the way he wanted. You could hear the respect in Paul's voice, layered with something like sadness, a quiet recognition that not everyone gets to live that honestly. Paul ended his tribute with a message that felt bigger than music. He said he hoped Ace lived the life he wanted, and that all any of us can do is try to do the same, just not go too soon. It wasn't just a farewell. It was a reminder, a human one, about how fragile everything really is. The foundation of KISS, brothers through conflict. For all the chaos that defined KISS, one thing Paul Stanley never backed away from was the truth about how it all began. He made it clear that the band's foundation wasn't built on perfection or harmony. It was built on four wildly different personalities crashing together at the right moment. And Ace Frehley was one of the pillars holding that structure up. Paul said it plainly. We couldn't have started it without them, meaning Ace and Peter Criss were more than bandmates. They were part of the original blueprint. Behind the scenes, though, being in KISS wasn't a peaceful ride. Ace and Paul clashed constantly, not because they didn't respect each other, but because they did care, and both were stubborn enough to protect their vision. Their conflicts weren't quiet disagreements. They were explosive, emotional, and sometimes messy. But somehow, that tension didn't destroy the band. It shaped it. It gave KISS its edge, its urgency, its fire. Fans didn't see the shouting matches, the creative battles, or the moments where one wrong word pushed the band to its breaking point. But those moments became part of the music in ways neither of them planned. Paul often compared their relationship to family for a reason. You don't choose family, and you don't always understand them, but you're tied together by something deeper than logic. That's how it was with Ace. Even after he left the band for good, that early bond never fully disappeared. Their shared history was too big, too loud, and too defining to be erased by distance. And when the world learned KISS would be honored by the Kennedy Center, Paul made a decision that proved exactly how important Ace's role truly was, even decades after the conflicts, the exits, and the silence. The Kennedy Center honor and the empty chair. When news broke that KISS would receive a Kennedy Center honor, it felt like the kind of recognition that arrives only once in a lifetime. It wasn't just a trophy or a headline. It was the establishment finally acknowledging a band that spent decades being too loud, too flashy, and too controversial for traditional institutions. But even with all that celebration, there was one question hanging in the air. How would they honor Ace Frehley now that he was gone? Paul Stanley and the band answered that with a gesture that said more than any speech could. On December 7th, as they take their seats at the ceremony, one chair will be left empty. Not filled with memorabilia, not symbolically covered, empty. A silent space reserved for Ace. The kind of tribute that hits harder because it doesn't try to explain itself. It's the kind of gesture that shows exactly how deep Ace's imprint was on KISS. Even though he wasn't part of their final tour, and even though the band moved on without him years ago, they chose to acknowledge him in the most visible, public way possible. It wasn't a favor. It wasn't nostalgia. It was respect, the kind that only grows after someone is gone. Fans immediately understood the weight of it. An empty chair means presence through absence. It means honoring the person who helped build the foundation, even though the relationship was complicated. It means admitting, without saying a word, that Ace was essential. But beyond the ceremony and the tributes, there's a deeper meaning in all of this, something that goes beyond rock history and taps into the human side of these legends. And that truth becomes even clearer when you look at what Paul Stanley said next. What can fans learn from their relationship? Looking back at Paul and Ace's story, it's easy to focus on the fights, the breakups, and the moments where it seemed like they couldn't stand each other. But beneath all that noise was something far more real. Two people who helped build a legacy together, even when they didn't always understand one another. Their relationship shows that success doesn't erase tension, and conflict doesn't cancel out the impact someone has on your life. For fans, that's the part worth paying attention to. Paul didn't just honor Ace because he was a great guitarist. He honored him because the journey they shared was messy, unpredictable, and unforgettable. It's a reminder that the people who shape us the most aren't always the ones we're closest to. Sometimes they're the ones who challenge us, frustrate us, and push us in ways we never expected. Ace lived boldly, without pretending to be anything other than who he was. Paul respected that more than anyone realized. And when he talked about hoping Ace lived the life he wanted, he wasn't just reflecting on a bandmate, he was speaking to everyone listening. It was a quiet message about living honestly, taking risks, and being willing to stand by the choices that make you who you are. In a strange way, their story also shows the value of unresolved connections. Not every relationship gets a perfect ending. Not every chapter closes neatly, but that doesn't diminish what came before. If anything, it makes it more human. And as Paul's tribute continued, it became clear that Ace's influence, both on him and on Kiss, didn't end with the music. It carried something deeper. Something that still resonates long after the final curtain. And that's where everything we've seen so far finally comes together. In the end, Paul Stanley's tribute to Ace Frehley wasn't just about a guitarist or a bandmate. It was about a connection that outlived every argument, every split, and every headline. Their story reminds us that some relationships stay complicated forever, and that's okay. What matters is the impact someone leaves behind, and Ace left a mark on Paul, on Kiss, and on the entire world of rock that no amount of conflict could ever erase. Ace lived exactly the way he wanted, and Paul respected that more than most people ever knew. The empty chair at the Kennedy Center says everything. You can't talk about Kiss without talking about Ace Frehley. His influence is built into the DNA of the band, and even in his absence, he still takes up space, the kind of space only a true original can claim. So now the question goes to you. How do you see their relationship? Were their differences part of what made Kiss legendary? Or did they hold the band back from reaching something even bigger? And what does Ace's story say about living life on your own terms, even when it isn't easy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more deep dives into the untold stories behind rock's most iconic moments, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's a lot more coming, and you won't want to miss what's next.